And as a Oh, and as assistant professor at the University of Georgia, she works hard to integrate biodiversity research with community engagement. She is also the director of their herbarium. She is the founding member of Black Botanist Week, which is where I got to know Tanisha. And that really works to amplify the work of Black botanists and has really been just an amazing it's an amazing organization to bring folks together. She's an author. She is a recipient of multiple awards, and most recently, the Botanical Society of America's Impact Award. I'm going to welcome Tanisha and let Tanisha introduce her topic this evening. But again, Tanisha, thank you so much for joining us. Oh,
Thank
she's also, for those of you just joining, she is a Washington native. So you are talking to geographically people in your region.
Yes, I'm excited. Thank you so much, Lee, for inviting me. I did not know that the Washington, D.C. had a botanical society. And so until I met Lee, I was like, this is crazy that I didn't know that. Like, I knew about the Smithsonian and kind of their works and folks there, but I did not know we had a botanical society in Washington. So I'm looking forward to doing more with you all, but I'll get into my topic today, which is conserving plants and culture, herbaria as a resource for supporting traditional ecological knowledge. And so we're going to go over some terms. I'm going to tell you about two projects where I bring together herbaria and also indigenous peoples. And we're kind of seeing with both eyes, and we'll learn about what that means soon. First, I want to give an outline of my talk. I'm just going to talk a little bit about my plantee passion. So, what was going on in DC and my journey to where I am now at the University of Georgia. We're going to talk a bit about traditional ecological knowledge and how I define it, how Herbaria can help preserve this knowledge, as well as two collaborative projects that I'm using with Herbaria to conserve knowledge and also culture. I'll make a case for culture as well. So, when I first started down my botanical pathway, I really wanted to know how plants will respond to climate change. I was super interested. I'm old enough to remember global warming. And so I was just really interested in how are plants going to make it. And so being from DC, I was raised by my great grandmother who had a lot of connection to plants. Being in the city, we used to get our food from a farm in Virginia. Like we would go there and do a co-op. So I was always surrounded by plants. And in our house, my grandmother had a green thumb. I'm not the best, although I took care of a greenhouse for 4 years. So I learned a lot, but my grandmother naturally had a green thumb. And so plants were always in my life. And I think that's why I was so chose this pathway in order to understand more about plants and the environment around us. So I went to Penn State for undergrad, did an environmental science degree, actually came back to DC, worked for Metropolitan Washington Councils of Governments in their environmental programs office. I helped put out the first climate change plan between DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And after that experience, I was like, I have to go back to graduate school because I'm tired of reading about the cool research people are doing. I actually want to do some research. So I went to California, to Cal State LA to get my master's to kind of beef up some of my science because I didn't have a lot of ecology and evolutionary biology, and then went to University of Connecticut for my PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology, where I did work looking at, like Lee said, looking at how a pelargonium species, so similar to the sister genus to the geraniums that we have here in the States, but pelargoniums are native to South Africa, how they're going to survive climate change. And so I did a lot of work in South Africa. So after I did that work, I moved to a postdoc in Pennsylvania. So full circle, went to undergrad in Pennsylvania and then went back to Pennsylvania to a tiny little school called Bucknell University and worked with a fabulous advisor, Dr. Chris Martine, and I'll bring him up again. He's also someone you should have. He's a very phenomenal speaker. But with that project, there was an NSF grant that I got pulled on to look at ethnobotany, and that is some of the Aboriginal people's work that I've done in Australia. And that lens really helped me kind of see plants, the connection between plants and people. Because before I was only concerned about the plants, I was like, people have voices. I need to be the voice for the plants. And that project really helped me kind of blend this connection between plant and people. As Lee mentioned, during this postdoc, the pandemic was happening, and I and a couple of other members of the botanical community created Black Botanist Week. And I'll just give us a little shout out. We're not as active as we used to be because we have new babies, new jobs, and a lot of different things, but we've done a couple things each year. So this year for Black History Month, we put on a bio blitz with the Sierra Club, Black and Natural History Museums, Black Birders Week, and a couple other groups. And so continue to watch our website. We're starting to do some other things and become a little bit more active with this group. But I love that our group is international. We have botanists, and we define the term botanist as anyone that loves plants. You don't need an academic degree, you just need a love for plants. And we have botanists from the UK, from South Africa, and from the US. And we're a fun bunch. And if you want to learn more about us, the website, but there's a little tab there that says the Growing Black Roots series. So we partnered with Holden Arboretum, and for entire year, every month, one of our team members, the committee members that you see listed here, gave a talk, some science, some personal. Like I kind of gave a talk about my journey to kind of discovering my own Black botanical legacy. Some people gave research talks, but all of that is recorded with teacher notes on it as well. So getting back to this talk is after I got that postdoc at Bucknell, started to think about ethnobotany, this plants people, I started to read more books like Braiding Sweetgrass and things like that, and thinking of plants as one of our greatest teachers. I love that Dr. Kimura in her book, she says, in some of the native languages, the term for plants literally translates to those who take care of us. And this is what I have to teach my students. I was like, you like to breathe, you like to eat, you like to clothe yourself, you need to learn about plants. You like your medicines, you need to learn about plants. And this connection really started my journey into thinking more about ethnobotany. If you want to learn more about kind of lessons from plants as it deals to either academia or mentoring students or mentoring just in general, this is a really good book from Dr. Montgomery, Lessons from Plants. She has a new book coming out, When Trees Testify, Science, Wisdom, History, and America's Black Botanical Legacy. She's part of Black Botanist Week. Is coming out next January the 20th, 2026, my birthday, actually. So I'm excited to get my hands on this book and do another author interview. So we did one for Lessons from Plants, and I'm excited to read this one and do an author interview, and I'll let Lee know when we do that. So let's get into this term, traditional ecological knowledge and seeing with both eyes. Another definition can be um, evolving knowledge acquired by indigenous or local peoples over hundreds of thousands of years, and really because of this direct contact with their environment. So not only this Western scientific thinking, but this knowledge that we get from being in our environment and for generations being in an environment or a place where we can start to see patterns and pick up patterns. Something that I've been trying to strive for with my own lab, creating a brand new lab here at the University of Georgia, is this place-based land care practices. So I do have research in other countries, but I'm trying to do more things locally here in Georgia as well, because this is where I am and this is where I'm starting to see patterns. But I love that Dr. Christina Eisenberg, her lab has this logo. It says braiding indigenous knowledge in Western science to reimagine a climate resilient future. And so that's something that I'm trying to do. Not all of my work is surrounded by partnering and collaborating with indigenous communities or other communities, but we do have a leg in my lab that's doing this and specifically looking at climate change. Something that I love about this figure is that she talks about these long-term relationships, these co-creation of stewardship plans. So when you're doing this type of work, it takes a long time. I often get students and folks asking me, well, how do you do this and how do you do this properly, right? How do you help a community that wants to be helped without just extracting knowledge and then not going back? And so I tell folks, like, even though I haven't done um, officially work in South Africa for 4 to 5 years, I still talk to the researchers there. I still talk to the families there. We're on WhatsApp groups. I'm connecting with them. I say, happy birthday. How are you doing during COVID? Do you need anything? That sort of thing that I could provide, even though I couldn't physically be there. With the Gullah Geechee, you'll hear that I am going there several times this semester with the Aboriginal peoples. We do a lot of Zoom calls, especially over the pandemic. Australia was great because they wouldn't allow foreigners into Aboriginal territories, but we were able to connect and continue to connect. So it's long-term relationships that you build trust and you actually get to do great work. So how can Herbaria be a resource to document and preserve this trust? But before, although we're all plant people, I still have to hype up because I'm a herbarium director. Herbaria, I think about them as biodiversity repositories. My students say they're a dead plant library, but I think they're more alive than my students give them credit for. There's so many stories in these cabinets from the people and the plants. And so I like to think of Herbaria not only documenting plants and all of the things, we can look at climate change impacts, we can look at invasion fronts and things like that, document new species. We were able to do that in Australia with a new bush tomato. That's this kind of first picture right here. We're showing the documentation. I wrote up a taxonomy report on a new bush tomato. Places. So these are places that I've been able to collect herbarium specimens for. The top picture is the Western Desert in Australia. So like keep that in mind when I bring Australia up. The middle picture is a really nice habitat in South Africa. In this bottom picture, also keep this in mind. This is the Gullah Geechee community that I work with. But I also think herbaria can preserve practices in people, right? When we think about collecting sweetgrass for baskets, when we think about different grasses along this Australian landscape that Aboriginal people are managing to kind of clear out this grass so you have other plants have light and things to grow, or we're collecting native foods or foraging. All of these things can be deposited into the herbaria and collect this culture, practices, and stories of the people, either locally or globally. So we have about 35,000 herbaria around the world, and we have almost 400 million specimens. So there's a lot of data, a lot of history in these records, and this is something that I continue to kind of mine this data to see what stories are there and what we can tell about the past. In this age of all this technology, we're digitizing all of our herbarias or as many as we can. It's pretty expensive. I actually just went to a conference trying to see, trying to help a couple countries in Africa to kind of put their money together to digitize a couple different herbaria, but it's pretty expensive. But we're in this age where we have a lot of data, and if things aren't rare, threatened, endangered, a lot of this herbarium data is freely available online. So if there's a plant that you're interested in, maybe you remember your mom saw it in this forest, you could look up a herbarium record during that time period, and you'll probably find it across one of those 400 plus million specimens. At UGA, where I am, the University of Georgia, we were founded in the 1920s. We're one of the largest herbaria in the Southeast United States. We have over 280,000 specimens and counting. And we do research, we do teaching, we do service. The top pictures I'm in the back, my curator Stevens in the back sitting up there on the cabinets, but we have 3 interns. And so we have interns every semester and through the summer. And we have so many researchers and students, people from Alan Weekly's crew, the botanical gardens visiting us, depositing specimens, or looking to compare specimens and update taxonomic monographs. My class is at the bottom. That's my plant taxonomy class. They have to get their I really go hard with herbarium in my plant taxonomy class. They learn a lot. So how can herbaria respectfully be a resource for and conserve the living histories of Indigenous peoples from around the world? So the first project I want to talk about is collaborations with Aboriginal peoples in Western Australia, and these are the Mardu peoples from Western Australia. So let's take a journey. This is kind of the landscape that we see of Western Australia. The Mardu tidal land is in the red in this map. And so Mardu is a blanket term for many different Aboriginal groups, but they have common law structures, common languages, and common cultural practices. They were from the early 20th century almost until 1970s. Colonialists came to Australia, kicked them out of the land. We have documentation that during that time period, we saw a drastic decline in species diversity and just overall health, plants and animals. So Mardu were let back on just a fraction of their land. So we see that red tidal land area for the Mardus. And there's other tidal lands from other Aboriginal groups across Australia. And so they were let back on the land in the late 1970s. And there's many literature showing kind of the uptick because Mardu managed the desert in a way in order for them to live, right? And so we are seeing an increase in species, plant and animal biodiversities. We didn't see the comeback of some of the extinct species that are no longer found in those areas, but some of the species that weren't doing as well are doing much better. So the project, we got an NSF grant to team up with the Mardu people, anthropologists from Penn State, as well as we're the botanists and geneticists from Bucknell University. This work was done over the pandemic, so we weren't able to go into the tidal lands that are in red. That was collected by the community. We were able to go outside of the community and collect those yellow points that you see there. And what the Mardu wanted to know is, will this staple food source, so this is called Solanum diversiflorum, locally called Wamala, so we call it Wamala. They wanted to know if Wamala was going to, like what conservation actions they had to take in order to conserve a staple food source. So we did the genetics, or I'll say I did the genetics work. So extracting the DNA, sequencing, assimilating the genome, and doing all the data analysis. And the Mardu told us what they thought was happening on the ground, meaning that they thought their populations were healthy, but they just wanted to make sure, and they would check other populations outside of the tidal lands. They didn't think they were as healthy. What did we show genetically? We showed the exact same thing. So we showed that populations within that red box, within the Mardu tidal land, lower had lower inbreeding rates, had lower isolation, so there was gene flow between populations and higher genetic diversity when compared to populations outside of the Mardu tidal land. This map is very deceiving. It makes it look like the Mardu tidal land populations are really close together. So you may think, okay, well, of course, gene flow because they're really close together, but these are like hundreds of kilometers away from each other, a lot of these Mardu territory points. And so we're really confident in knowing that the folks that are managing these populations are Mardu, because we haven't been able to document any animals that are eating these fruits or anything like that. And so the way Mardu process this staple food source, Wamala, is that they go around to different populations picking fruits, and what they do is they take the seeds out because the seeds are really spicy, and they're not good. It's almost like a pep. Well, this is peppers are in the Selena family as well, but you wouldn't want to touch your eyes after you touch the seed. They knock the seeds out of the fruit and they're knocking them as they're walking along these pathways, and they're walking miles and miles and miles a day, going from populations and grabbing fruit. Sometimes they dry them, sometimes they eat them fresh. I always get the question, what do these tomatoes taste like? They're about the size of like a little bit bigger than a small cherry tomato. They're not as juicy. Um, they taste kind of like a cross between a tomato and a little bit of like a sweetness of a melon. But if you want to learn more about this story, on YouTube, we made a video documenting this collaborative partnership. The YouTube channel is called Plants Are Cool Too. That's managed by my postdoc advisor, Dr. Chris Martine. And the episode is how one Aboriginal community is making things better for an important plant. And I can also send this to Lee to send out to in an email as well. But it's a really nice documentary showing what we found. And it was really nice to see what the Mardu people were seeing on the ground were the same thing we saw in the genetics of the plant. So that's one iteration, and we collected tons of herbarium specimens. And so these are all we left some in Australia and then some at Bucknell University. So the next project, my title project, the main project that I want to talk about is collaboration with the direct descendants of Harris Neck community, this Gullah Geechee community here in Georgia. So the Gullah Geechee peoples are descended from enslaved West Africans, mainly from these countries that I have highlighted here, but mainly from Senegal, Gambia, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, because these folks were already versed in the techniques of how to grow rice and indigo and things like that. And so when the enslaved people were brought to the sea islands and the coastal areas of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, they were working on rice plantations, indigo plantation, and sea island cotton plantations. And so it says here, isolation protected and kept their unique culture. This is the only thing I'm going to read because I don't remember these quotes offhand. But there was a study done on the Gullah Geechee peoples. Creel in 1988 and Joyner in 1985 says, due in part to the remoteness of the islands and also the planters' class susceptibility, so the enslavers, to their susceptibility to malaria and other waterborne diseases prevalent in semi-tropical coastal regions, the Gullah Geechee worked in the oyster shell infused soils in relative isolation. Absent from constant oversight, produce an optimal environment for the continuance of indigenous practices and cultural traditions, thus enabling enslaved Africans to construct a new identity as a result of and despite the tragic conditions of slavery. And so that is one of the really unique characteristics about Gullah Geechee people and culture is that they have these direct lines to their West African roots, meaning they have similar languages, similar cultural practices, similar uses of plants, similar ceremonies that you can directly trace back to these West African countries. So that's a little bit about the Gullah Geechee people and culture. I want to tell you about Harris Neck, which is it's a city, but it's also a Gullah Geechee community about 30 miles south of Savannah. So Savannah is on the right-hand side of the map with a little green dot, but Harris Neck is in that bold red box. I want to give you a little history about this area. So in 1865, Harris Neck, the land was deeded to a former enslaved person, Robert Delagal. In 1942, there was a census taken, and we saw about 75 Gullah Geechee families were living on the land. This also was a time during World War II, the government claims eminent domain to build an army field at Harris Neck. Although there were other communities around and other plots of land that no community was living on, they chose the Black community to move off of their property in Harris Neck. So the Black families were only given a few weeks to move, and their crops and homes were burned once it came time, except for the one white resident of that community. And this is just a paper documentation from 2020 of a woman who was a young child who remembers this. And she was the day, like July 27, 1942, remembered the day of the taking of Harris Neck land. So in 1943, an airfield was built and used for only 1 year. And this is showing the airfield because it changed it to hiking trails and things like that. So the land set from the 40s to the 60s. From 61 to 62, the government reclaims the land, gives it over to the Department of Interior, and now it's being managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and it's a national wildlife refuge. The land and the plants and the animals there are beautiful. It's a sanctuary for waterfowl, birds, alligator, I mean, just the likes. It's gorgeous there. This is that bottom picture is showing some of the birds that are, it's a breeding ground, some of the land there. From the 60s till now, the community is still trying to get their land back, but continually are met with opposition. And so that's kind of where this direct descendants of Harris Neck, this organization that the community put together in order to fight to get back their land. So that's the history of the community that I'm working with, but also in their fight to get back their land, to reclaim their roots. They wanted to document some of the culturally important plants of the community and of the their Gullah Geechee heritage, especially since a lot of the older members of the community are getting pretty up there in age, and we saw a lot of passing away during the pandemic. And so these are the people that I work with. I work with the Gullah Geechee Harris Neck um, community members, but this all started with, on the left-hand side, I'm not sure if you all can see my mouse, but on the left-hand side, you see two women with a green book. The woman on the left hand is Krista Hayes. She lives in Harris Neck. She was at a community meeting to get them to stop spraying rare plants along the highways. She met these two women holding the poster. And she said, hey, like, we should be caring more about these plants. Margaret and Francis said, hey, we actually want to document plants in the Gullah Geechee. And so they teamed up with Dr. Elizabeth King. That is from UGA. And I fell into the work because Lizzie and I actually, we both work on the continent of Africa, and we met over coffee just to talk about research. And she told me about this project, and she said, hey, are you interested? Is there a herbarium? Would that be something you would want to do? And I was like, absolutely. And so I've been a part of it. This is going on year 3. Stephen, my curator, is part of this project, and Jordan Argett, he's a PhD student in ecology that's also been helping out with this project. So what did we do? We got somebody from UGA, Maya Timmons. She and her cousin went around 3 years ago to people all throughout Harris Neck and actually all along the Gullah Geechee corridor. So North Carolina, South Carolina. I don't think they got to Florida, Georgia, and they were talking to different people about the plants that they use. And so the first project that we made to document these plants, besides herbarium records, was this Gullah Geechee plant guide coloring book. And Maya, she wouldn't say she's a botanist. She's definitely a botanist, but an amazing illustrator. This is her coloring book. So we just made sure that the botanical, the botany was right, but this is her coloring book. So I am interested. So this is Verbascum thapsus, commonly known as mullein. Not a native plant here, but it's been here long enough. I would say it's naturalized and it's used medicinally. Something that's really unique about this coloring book is every spread has a 2-page. So you have a drawing of the plant, and then you also have this cartoon character. Alongside that, you have a little the two more pages. One is in the author's words, kind of what was she thinking of when we went to visit these plants and she was looking at these plants, learning about these plants for the different uses of her family and extended family, as well as something a bit about the plants. When we look at the mullein plant itself, we see that rosettes of leaves. We know that they're pubescent or really fuzzy and hairy. I think that's what we have in the coloring book, that they're really fuzzy. And you see all these seashells around it. What Maya did was, like she said, every time we came, when we saw mullein, it would be really sandy and I would see seashells. And so she's kind of putting the habitat with this coloring book as well. So there's so many different things to look at. When we look at the Vera, the Curious Medic here, her hair looks like the inflorescence of the mullein. Then she has these rib cages, and we know that mullein is used for respiratory infections. She has the hip bones out there. It's used for arthritis and other ailments. The leaf is wrapped around the leg because it can be made into kind of like a compact to be put on the skin for different skin ailments. And then she has that medical bag to show that, hey, this plant has medicinal uses. So everything that's in the coloring book, everything that she's thinking of is coming from all of the knowledge that she's learning about this plant. And I thought this was so fabulous. This is Maya doing all this digital artwork from hand. Like, she did this from scratch, which is amazing. So we have this is, it's a free coloring book. We'll have to print some more. Everyone asked me about these. We need to print some more, but Maya has come up with a deluxe version of the coloring book. So we want to print those first, and she's adding in some new plants. So this is a draft of the Calocarpa americana, so the beauty berry. Oh my goodness. This is just fabulous. So on the left-hand side, she has that classic clustering of the beauty berries, those really nice purplish, pinkish berries. They're all over campus right now, and I just love to see them. They just bring a smile to my face. But she also has the bird, because this is a staple food source for many birds and other mammals. And then she has this jar and this knife, because you can make the berries are edible, and you can make a jam out of it. And a lot of people do make jam out of it. So it's just like, it's just so great. In her character here, this is called the beauty berry. So the hair kind of looks like these string of berries at the top. She's holding a mirror to signify that beauty. She's eating a piece of toast with the beautyberry jam on it, which is amazing. And then also the leaves, you can crush them up and kind of put them on your skin and use them as an insect repellent. So that's why she's stepping on the insect at the bottom. She has such a fabulous way of depicting all of the many uses of these plants. So this is something that we've been working on with the community together. So I also recruited an undergraduate student, Raleigh Forrestal. He worked with me about a semester and a half and also went with the community with me. So we had these interviews in order to put the coloring book together. After the coloring book came out, we worked again with the community in a couple different sessions. So we had these days where we would lay out the plants that the community members said, like, oh, beautyberry, or mullein, or trying to think of some other plants I should know, over 20 different plants, not osage, saw palmetto, muhlenbergii, sweetgrass, things like that. And so we would kind of gather all these plants and make sure the common name that the community members were saying were connected to the scientific name. And that's where I came in. Stephen and I came in to make sure that the scientific names were attached to that. We spent a lot of time just going through. So I took pictures here of folks going through, and every single plant, every single oral story that they gave us, we went through it with these workshops over and over again to make sure it's correct. And so now we're just at I only gave you a teaser here, but we're actually almost done with the Gullah Geechee plant guide. And so this is going to be a continuation from the coloring book. So instead of it being a coloring book, we wanted to actually make a guide for folks that want to go out into the field, go out into their community, and see these plants, use these plants, and get a feel for the environment around them. So most of this is going first to the Gullah Geechee corridor, so all of the communities along the coast, and then we extend it out for free to other communities throughout the US, and even I've taken some to South Africa. So this is just the start of when we started about a year ago of what we're doing. So we have real photos. It's not going to be the coloring book style. Like this is going to be like a actual like natural guide to the plants around Harris Neck. And it's going to be called the Gullah Geechee Plant Guide. And so we have over 20 plants and kind of in two sections. I think we have like herbs and medicinal plants. And I think the other section is baskets and I forget the name of the other section. We have all of this work has to be approved by the community. So every step of the way, we're checking in with the community. And even so, what the undergraduate student Riley and I did, we did all the weekly, all of the plant tax. We put all of the kind of academic descriptions of these plants. Then we went and said, hey, nobody's going to know what pubescence and all these things are. And then we kind of changed the language. Then the third round of this, or maybe the fourth round of this, was going to the community and asking them, when you look at mullein and you see that in the forest, how do you know it's mullein? What are you looking at? What are the key characteristics? And so then we changed the language, and we've had different community members that are plant wizards go and say like, oh, the leaves are jagged or the leaves are sawtooth, where we would have said something, but some botanical name that no one knows, versus like with mullein, the leaves are fuzzy, right? Or hairy instead of pubescent or something like that. Or this is an inflorescent stalk. And there's just like, oh, it's a flower cane or something like that. And so we're kind of changing the language, making sure it's still botanically accurate, but in a way that anyone that picks up a book will understand and be able to pick mullein out when they see it. So that went really fast, but I want to thank all of the communities of caring and compassionate people that have let me just tell a bit of their stories and to continue to work with them. We have more projects in the pipeline, and I'll let you know when these plant guides are available. Some of the our kind of we're trying to work on funding right now for these plant guides because this was a C grant for the Gullah Geechee work, which means that we can't charge for these guides. So we're trying to work on publication costs right now. But I'll let you know once we get it together and we're able to share some materials with the Botanical Society of Washington, because some of these plants are in your backyard as well. But I would be happy to chat, take any questions. I'm not sure the timing. Oh, not too bad.
This is Gene Roser. Where does the name Gullah Geechee come from? To start with, what's the
That
origin?
that's a good I actually don't know that. I actually have never thought about where I'm if I had to guess, I'm assuming it has some West African roots somewhere. But I'm not sure. That is a great question. I
And,
never thought about it.
and I have a completely different question too, and that is, well, I'm at a university, Florida International University, so I'm tuning in from Miami. But given the, let's say, parlous state of herbaria in so many universities, I mean, I think of what happened recently with the Duke University Herbarium, and they
Yeah.
had something like, I don't know, a million
Mhm.
specimens or something.
Yeah.
What is how is the University of Georgia Herbarium faring in the university?
Yeah, we are really lucky. So we have about 13 natural history collections, and we're all under the umbrella of the Georgia Natural History Museum. And that's something that's a highlight at our university. We have interns, our students get certificates for like historic preservation, museum collections. And so um, the president and the dean see the herbarium as a resource. We're one of the only functioning museums on campus right now because the actual Natural History Museum is getting a whole facelift. We have tours every semester last semester, I think we had over 100 elementary school kids coming into the herbarium. So thank goodness, because Duke was very scary, the herbarium at University of Georgia is in a good spot and people see its value. But I have to continue to just make sure people remember its value because we're supposed to be moving to a new building soon. And I had to just on Monday write an email and say, hey, we're not a storage facility, we're an active research and museum, and this is the space that we need. So, but
Well,
we're in a much better spot.
as they say in Australia, good on you. Uh, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tanisha, we had a question in the chat. Is there a Gullah Geechee cookbook? And what native fruit trees were favored?
Yes, there are a couple Gullah Geechee cookbooks. Who they're by, I cannot remember, but there's definitely, because I've looked this up just in general when we were thinking about some of the ethnobotanical as well as other fun facts we wanted to put in a plant guide. There are some, but I could look those things up and send it to you all in an email because I want to send you the Australia YouTube video as well. And fruit trees, we don't have any fruit trees in our guide. We have mainly like shrubby, wildflowers kind of things, grasses. I can't think of any. The beautyberry is a shrub, so it's not a tree. It's a small tree. That's about it. I'm trying to think what else do we have in there that has a fruit that's edible. Mm. We have Yopon holly, but that's more of a caffeinated drink that has a berry, but no fruit trees. No fruit trees were described in this community, right? So along the corridor, Gullah Geechee communities are different, right? They use different plants and there are similarities, but every Gullah Geechee community is a little bit different. And so we really are focusing mainly on the Harris Neck community. And where I've been, I haven't seen any fruit trees in the lands that they're on right now. Yeah, good question though.
And we have another question that just came in. Well, thank you. What scientific name do you list for sweetgrass?
Oh, what is it? Muhlenberg. That's a good question. So we had a long we had a long discussion of because there's a couple different things called sweetgrass. What is it? Muhlenbergia. Is it capillaris? I think it's capillaris is the one that we're quoting. Ooh, do I have the plant guide open? I think it's capillaris, Muhlenbergia. We also have Spartina patens. So on Sapelo, they call that sweetgrass, but on more of the mainlands, we have Muhlenbergia. Oh, Sericea, so purple muley, and that's also called sweetgrass. Great question.
So Tanisha, my question relates to, have you found any plants connecting back or with roots reflecting the African ancestry? Like, of course, the verbascum is European, and I'm sure they're using native native plants there, and sure, sweetgrass is names for different sorts of plants all over the place. But are there any connections either by virtue of relatives? I would expect not necessarily direct imports.
Besides, we're listing okra. Besides that, that's like the only one that kind of has that direct connection back to West Africa. Yeah, that's the only one that we have in the plant guide that people said that they use for either eating, medicinal, like drinking the mucus with water and things like that. Yeah.
And any yams?
No yams, no yams. I think a lot of the folks when they were one, it was kind of an open survey of kind of what plants did you or your parents or grandparents use, and a lot of people kind of thought medicinally how they were using things not for food sources. So a lot of it is medicinal plants. But this is a good line of questioning because this is something we can talk about for like a future project to look at more food plants because that would get at the fruit trees, the yams, yeah, and maybe even tracing Donna, your question, tracing back some plants coming from West Africa or relatives.
Do the people still speak Gullah?
They do, they do. I don't understand, but yes, they do. They don't really speak it around us, but yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe one day I'll learn. I have a whole long list of languages I want to learn.
Tanisha, this is Lee. I took a couple notes when you were talking. I just must say I'm so enchanted with this idea that you started to talk about the herbaria and the idea of these stories. There being stories in the closets or stories in the cabinets, and that in juxtaposition with your students thinking of it as a dead library. And I just think that project like this is just such a wonderful way to think about, you know, how you open those doors,
Yeah.
for, it's like you go, some people think you go to an herbaria for, identification or something, but what are the voices that come out, and
Yes.
just that work you're doing to bring that and to bring that sense of really that ethnobotany and the stories, the human part, and that always has been such a theme. It's no doubt, sort of that community engagement piece is really strong. I'm curious, in terms of the efforts to try to get this land back, do you have a sense of what efforts they're making and where they are in that initiative?
Yeah, from the last thing that I've heard, and this was maybe about 5 years ago, they had some support from the NAACP lawyers and they were looking into things, but I don't think it went very far. I think it's because they're a small community. They're trying to make some noise, but they really are a small community. And so I think in order to get a lot of pro bono lawyers involved, you may need a little extra flash. There's so much going on. And so I'm hoping that they find a team that will be able to, but I don't know how you take land back from like US Fish and Wildlife. Like when I go to this community, the community members always offer for me to stay with them, but then also we basically stay with the rangers because there are research housing on Harris Neck Wildlife Refuge, and normally we're using their facilities, so we're like, we'll just stay here. But yeah, I don't know how you would it's hard to think how you would reclaim the land. It's as far as like a housing development versus just like keeping it a natural area. Um, and so that may be some of the pushback from like the government kind of side of things, is like, this is a wildlife nature refuge. We're not going to turn it into housing. Um, although it didn't become a wildlife refuge for until like the 60s, and so there was ample time for the government to give their houses back, because these folks were, a lot of them still uh fish and hunt and things like that for a living. Like there's like Maya, not only is she a botanical illustrator, she works for the family business, which is they are selling seafood and things from the sea. Um, so they did that on those lands, and they never saw a reduction in fish and crabs and all these other things, and so they were able to, just like Aboriginal peoples, manage it sustainably. And so it's tricky.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say as a start to many of these repatronization things is they at least give the people access to utilize the land because, as you said, they've done that in the past in a very sustainable way. Whereas, of course, other people are, prohibited from doing these activities on, the federal lands, but that the indigenous or the at least these communities that traditionally occupied it at least are given some type of special access.
Yeah, they don't have that, because when the park, they do have a gate at the park, and when it's closed, it's closed. You have to have basically talk with the rangers to get the code. So they don't have access all the time, but I will say the two U.S. Fish and Wildlife rangers that were there. They're both retiring. I'm so sad, but they were wonderful. They worked with the community. They made sure they opened up the park on weekends and special times and things like that. So they do have a good relationship, at least with the current rangers of the wildlife refuge, but they don't have special access to fish or anything like that. They can't do that.
So the community's houses are not actually on Harris Neck at it then. Where are they?
So they're in the Harris Neck Community City. They're just not on that plot of land on Harris Neck. Yeah.
Ah, I see. Okay.
They're still in Harris Neck.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was wondering.
Yeah, yeah.
How much danger of sea level rise is there in that area?
Lots. Yeah, yeah, lots. They are on a little like peninsula kind of thing. There's a lot of riverways, a lot of bridges and things like that. There's a lot of impact. They get hit by the storms pretty badly. So I was supposed to be in Savannah this with working with Harris Neck. We every year we bring students from a local academy that's in Savannah, and most of the students are of Gullah Geechee descent. And I have them make herbarium specimens. I teach them about the different plants, and then they go fishing. They do all these things. And so we were supposed to do that last weekend, but the hurricanes, it was just too much and dangerous to go, although the path shifted and it didn't directly hit the coast, but it still was too much rain and wind and flooding for us to go down there. So we're gonna, or go over, but we're gonna do it next semester when we don't have to worry about this hurricane season. So yeah, they're at the forefront of the climate change impacts.
Any other questions before we thank Tanisha for joining us this evening? And I know Tanisha's going to follow up with us on some fun resources to share.
Yeah.
Lots of thank yous, Tanisha. And we're thrilled that you know about the Botanical Society of Washington. Being a native Washingtonian, one of the perks of coming and being a speaker is you are now a member.
Oh, wow, thank
So,
you.
yeah, so we look forward to you being part of this community, and yeah, and we will definitely circle back with you. And thank you so very much for being with us.
Thank you all so much and for the wonderful questions. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of you all actually in person, maybe around Christmas time. That's going to be the next time that I'll be in DC.
Well, yeah, stay tuned because we do a fun members December event in person, potluck, great food, and a really rich community. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all
Yeah.
so much. This was so much fun. And Lee, thank you again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.